If you're into true crime or even just American history, you may know that H.H. Holmes is considered the first American serial killer. He used his maze-like boarding house in 1800s Chicago as a tool to murder people in cruel and unusual ways. But did you know he actually built a second murder castle in Texas? Hello again everyone and welcome back to May's Mortem. I'm going to be changing up some things here on this channel again, where I change the title of most of these videos to just be under my channel name, May's Mortem. So yeah, I'm going to be doing like mystery, true crime, conspiracy videos under May's Mortem. And also some lifestyle videos as well because you guys really seem to like that room tour video I did. I'll link that one up above for you in case you want to watch it. Also, it was suggested to me that some of you guys wanted to see my outfits as I film because I do put on a whole outfit before I sit down to make these videos for you, so here's a shot of my outfit. My headdress is from Baby the Star Shine Bright, my dress is from Angelic Pretty, and my shoes are also from Baby the Star Shine Bright. Everything else is off-brand. Anyways, my name is Mayfield, and today we'll be talking about the second murder castle that H.H. Holmes built. He built it in Fort Worth, Texas, and it actually had a hand in helping contribute to his downfall. Before we start, I need to do a disclaimer that this video is for educational purposes and viewer discretion is advised because this video will have content concerning murder. With all of that being said, I'll pour the tea and then we'll get into it. Oh my god, it's so hard to pour in these sleeves. Ugh. I do need to take off this glove though so I can scroll on my tablet and look at my notes, but I have my goth hand. So if you've been on the true crime side of the internet for a while, you probably already know about H.H. Holmes. For the uninitiated, I am going to do a crash course here right quick, but if you feel like you know everything there is to know about him, please feel free to skip ahead to this time. H.H. Holmes was born in May of 1861. He would do a lot of shady things throughout his life, including marrying up to 4 women and conducting a lot of insurance scams, both of which were easier to get away with back in the day because back in the 1800s, if you committed a crime, you could just leave town, and then they would never catch you. Along with all of these other crimes, he's mostly well known because he built a murder castle in downtown Chicago around the time of the World's Fair in the late 1800s. The World's Fair was an event that took place in 1893. The purpose of the World's Fair was for countries to come together and kind of showcase their cultural and scientific marvels. I would say now you could probably compare it to a state fair, maybe on a larger scale though. The World's Fair was so big that it would bring in travelers from all around the world. And it created the perfect storm for H.H. Holmes to begin murdering people in his hotel, which was called the World's Fair Hotel. Holmes originally acquired the land that he was going to build his murder hotel on by getting it the old-fashioned way. He got a job to earn some money. Whenever he first got to Chicago, he actually became an employee at a drugstore that was across the street from a vacant lot. He was told by his employer that if he worked really hard, one day the drugstore could be his. And that's exactly what happened. There are actually reports that he murdered the previous owners of this drugstore, but that's not true. He got it fair and square. Once he became the drugstore's owner, he ended up having a lot more money than he used to, so he had enough to buy the vacant lot that was across the street. He immediately went to work on hiring builders to build a hotel of his own design. He would hire new builders and then fire them almost immediately a week later because he didn't want anyone to know what the building was really going to look like. He had them build body chutes, gas chambers, hallway mazes, and he even had them soundproof some of the rooms. And he did this all without the builders knowing or being able to figure it out. He even had an acid bath and a crematorium in the basement. We also know Holmes would clean the bones of the people that he murdered and assemble them into medical displays to sell to the local college. And while he did murder people in cruel ways, it's likely that his murders started out as money motivated. I'm basing that off of his history of insurance fraud and general scheming to always get some extra cash. So Holmes would let people book these rooms for like a weekend or so while the World's Fair was going on, and then he would murder them in their rooms with the various tools he had built into the building. Like some of the rooms had gas pipe hookups, and then he would turn the gas all the way up and then the people would suffocate in their sleep. He didn't murder all of his guests that stayed at the hotel because, you know, it would be suspicious if everybody went in there and just disappeared, right? But many of them did die in horrific ways. And no one would realize that these people were even missing because they weren't in constant contact with people like how we are today. Back in the 1800s, you could go on a trip to see your grandma and then you could go missing and everyone would just have to accept that. Of course they would be sad, but like what could they do? It was the 1800s, they were all like pilgrims. If you want to know more about H.H. Holmes before you watch the rest of this video, please feel free to go watch any of the videos I've linked in the description. So there's our mini recap of H.H. Holmes and his murder castle in Chicago. But what, you may ask, about the one in Texas? The story of the Texas murder castle begins when H.H. Holmes meets a woman by the name of Minnie Williams in 1893. He met her in the employment office of Chicago and he charmed her by being smarmy and manipulative, as serial killers tend to be. He offered Minnie the job of being his stenographer, which is kind of an old-timey secretary. She accepted the job, and after one thing led to another, they married that same year. So while Minnie thought she had met the love of her life, Holmes actually had other ideas. In reality, Minnie was actually an heiress. She had inherited some expensive property in downtown Fort Worth, Texas that was located at 2nd and Commerce Streets. But besides Minnie inheriting this property, she also had a brother and sister that were in line to claim it as well. Holmes wanted that property, so much so that he convinced Minnie to sign over the property to an alias of his. Like, she didn't even put it in his real name, she put it under a fake name for him. After this, he murdered both her and her sister, and I'm fairly certain he murdered her brother as well. I think he got all 3 of them. During all of this, Holmes is starting to look pretty suspicious to the Chicago police, but not for the reasons that you would think. While building his murder castle in Chicago, he had all those workmen that he hired, all the supplies he used to build the building, and he didn't pay for any of it. And they had already been watching him for insurance fraud, so this was just another nail in the coffin for him. So yeah, things are heating up for him in Chicago, and he decides to take this time to get out of town and go check out his new property in Fort Worth, Texas. The land that he had stolen from Minnie was located downtown at East 2nd Street and Rusk Street, which is now called Commerce Street. I actually went to the location where the castle was for this video because we were within reasonable driving distance. And in Texas, reasonable driving distance is like a couple hours. Apparently an hour is a lot to some people, can't relate. Right now I'm standing on the corner of the lot, which is where the turret-style entryway to the building would have been. Like this, right? Now it's just a restaurant patio and an outdoor stage area, but it's weird to think that a dude came here originally to do something as sinister as build a murder castle and kill people for their cash. Okay, time to go back to the filming chair. Whenever Holmes got to Texas, the property ended up just being another vacant lot downtown, so he immediately started construction upon arrival. The exterior of the Texas castle looked almost identical to the Chicago castle. The blueprints for the 2 castles even look exactly the same, but the Texas castle was actually twice as large because the lot size there was bigger. The hotel was built with a similar nesting rooms design as the last one, with some rooms centered in the middle of the building that would have no windows and only one door to get in and out of each of the rooms. It's said that these nested rooms had gas pipes connected to them through the closets and that the closets all had uneven walls. Some people have speculated that this may have been an attempt to make new asphyxiation chambers. Some articles even mention the existence of multiple chutes that were suspiciously body-sized that went all the way from the 3rd floor to the basement. They also said that there was a vault on the 3rd floor that was described as a closet within a closet. It was said that it seemed like he intended to have even more secret rooms in this murder castle than in the last one. It's important to note that he likely saw this building as the ultimate money-making scheme. He murdered people in whack ways for sure, but ultimately he just wanted their cash. It all sounds kind of like a lot of work when you could have just like gotten a job or started a business or done something normal. I hear that was easy back then, wasn't it like the Industrial Revolution or something? Whatever. Whenever Holmes started constructing his mansion in Fort Worth, everyone immediately noticed how shady the whole operation seemed to be. He was buying all of the supplies and labor for the mansion on credit he never intended to pay for. People said that the gutter behind the building smelled funny, like he had experimented, whatever that's supposed to mean. Murder people, I guess. His new hotel was actually going in a vacant lot that was across the street from City Hall. And even if it wasn't supposed to be a new murder mansion, he was building it with stolen supplies and labor. Which is pretty gutsy. It kind of shows how arrogant Holmes really was. It sounds like people in Texas were more immediately suspicious of Holmes, so it's not surprising that a lot of people were keeping an eye on him, including local law enforcement. It was never confirmed whether or not Holmes actually murdered anyone in the new hotel in Fort Worth, but that's because as soon as it was completed in 1894, he skipped town. The building in the end was never used for its intended purpose, which was murder, or at least a very intricate scam. But why did Holmes end up leaving town, you might ask? Well, after not paying all these guys for their construction supplies and not paying people for labor, he got in trouble for it. The workmen were complaining and the police took notice. And besides all of that, he ended up doing the most criminally Texan thing possible. He stole a bunch of horses. He stole them, shipped them to St. Louis, and then sold them there for a ton of cash. You can steal the construction labor, you can steal the supplies, but by God, you cannot steal the horses. Holmes left Texas for Boston after this, saying that he would rather serve 5 years in prison up north rather than spend 1 year in a Fort Worth jail. The prisons there are terrible. I don't know why that would be true, but I suppose they were just really rancid. Holmes was then arrested in Boston, originally for this horse theft, but then he was also charged with murder. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and then hanged in May of 1896. After he left town, he left the murder castle in Fort Worth empty, and it definitely creeped people out. But after he died, it became instantly famous almost overnight. Reporters from all over were rushing to Fort Worth to see the second H.H. Holmes murder castle. Its spooky reputation was not helped by its general unkempt appearance. It was abandoned after all. Weeds were beginning to take over the property, and people said that it smelled suggestive. Whatever that means. The newspapers would come to refer to the building as the Rusk Street Fire Trap because it kept catching on fire, probably from all of those shady gas pipes sticking out of the walls. And the town hall that was originally across the street ended up moving to another part of the city, so it became this really creepy, dark, foreboding alleyway kind of situation. Basically what I'm saying is it wasn't cute. The building ended up going through a few different iterations of hotels over the years, and some of them even used H.H. Holmes' name to market itself. Holmes used the alias O.C. Pratt while he was in Texas, and they ended up calling it at one point the Pratt Building. Another owner called it the Holmes Building or the Holmes Castle, and yet another owner even tried to completely rebrand it as St. Elmo's Hotel. Despite everyone's attempts to use the building as an actual hotel, it wouldn't end up working out. It continued to catch fire all the time, and it would have constant legal battles that surrounded it. Eventually, around 1930, the building was torn down so that the lot could be used for something else. H.H. Holmes is one of those killers where you can't help but read everything you can find about them. But the more I learned about him, the more I realized how dumb he actually was. It's like that TikTok song says, he was just sort of charismatic and white. He could have just had a normal life, got a normal job. I don't know, murder's not okay, don't do it. I think that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share the video with your friends because it really helps me out a lot. I'll see you again next week, okay guys? Bye!